Well, thanks to Susie Menere and her speakers for that session all about automation. I don't think somehow that MEF's tagline will change to automate or die, but that was the key takeaway from that session. Automation is absolutely critical. So thank you very much to them. Now we're going to be moving into a little track here at MEF, talking about the whole area of voice. Voice, contrary to popular belief, is still very much alive and kicking. The channel has been around since 1876, so it's nearly 150 years old, which is 5 times older than SMS, to give you a little bit of an idea. Now, Patrick Christian is a very well-known analyst in the area of voice from TeleGeography. He is the principal analyst. He unfortunately couldn't be with us live today because he's at another event speaking live in person, but we have a recorded session of him looking at the area of voice from an analyst perspective, giving you a look at all the trends going on. So Sam will now play the video from Patrick, which will be about 14 minutes, and then he'll come back to me and I'll be talking with Orange.
Hello, my name's Patrick Christian. I'm an analyst with TeleGeography, and today we'll be talking about trends in international voice. What we'll be looking at is international voice traffic and revenue, global trends, and the rise of the OTTs and how that affected wholesale voice and voice over IP. We'll look at regional variations as well, the traffic and revenue, and the shift in traffic and revenue to emerging markets, and also looking at wholesale versus direct and retail traffic. And then we'll end off looking at mobile versus fixed, but the subscribers, traffic and revenues once again, and the shift of data usage by services. And finally, we'll be looking ahead at what's to come for mobile subscriptions. First, let's start off with a bit of a recap. Looking at traffic decline. International traffic volumes peaked out in about 2014, 2015, and then we see a decrease in volumes the subsequent years. And in 2015, we see negative growth, steep at first. We see a little bump up in 2018, and it's steadied out at around -6 or -7% decline annually. We get questions often about did we see an increase of traffic during COVID? The short, big picture answer is no. A more detailed analysis suggests that the answer is actually yes, but not very much. We saw an early bump in the first quarter when the lockdowns began, but by the second half of the year we see traffic levels dropping to about the same or lower growth rates as in previous years. This is not the same at all of what we saw on the capacity or the data side. We see a distinct quick uptick of capacity growth, and then since then it's held steady and has not dipped back down. But this was not the case in voice. So once again, continuing with the recap, what is the cause of this? Why the decrease? Right around 2014, 2015 is when we start to see penetration of 3G, 4G increase. And as more people are getting on social media and apps such as WhatsApp and other calling apps or social media, this is when we start to see a decrease in international voice traffic on the traditional historic networks. So from 2015 on, we see an uptick, of course, in the subscriber growth with different apps like we were talking about, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Viber, Line, KakaoTalk. Although in end of 2021, we see this leveling out in the number of subscribers, but we still see the continued growth of voice applications and OTT voice, and continue decline in the carrier voice. Now, if we're looking at the OTT impact, this graph shows with the dotted line, this is with the carrier traffic, and we see the drop in growth post 2015. So the carriers are on the bottom. But if we add the OTTs on top, this brings growth back to about the same level of historic levels of around 10% and higher. And taking a look at the international wholesale carriers, We see two distinct groups in this chart. We see the Vodafone and Tata. These are more specialized wholesalers, international voice wholesalers. And then we see the group below them on the chart that are made up of the incumbents, for example, for France, Orange, Deutsche Telekom, Germany, BIX, Belgium, etc. And we see as of 2015, when volumes start to decrease for national voice, we see the two groups coming together closer in terms of total volume. And taking a look at the global retail revenues from international calls, we do see once again the peak in around 2014, 2015. And we have seen a decline in revenues since then. However, we see still generating over $50 billion a year on the retail side. On the wholesale side, we'll look at very briefly later in the presentation, we're seeing around 15 billion a year. So still, even on decline, the international voice is generating, above 70 billion dollars a year. Okay, now let's take a look at regional voice trends. In this slide, we're looking at wholesale traffic and revenues. In this particular slide, we're looking at the traffic and how they vary by region. We're comparing 2013 to 2020. And one thing that stands out, of course, the first thing that stands out is traffic volumes vary greatly by region. Seeing in East Asia, South Asia, Western Europe, we see the most traffic. And then if we compare historically 2013 to 2020, we see that volumes, even though overall international voice is declining since 2015, we see in Western Europe that there's actually higher volume of wholesale traffic, and in Eastern Europe and South Asia, almost same level of traffic volumes. And a lot of this is attributed to the growth in mobile phone subscriptions, and just the amount of calling international increased over when it was just fixed lines. And if we look at wholesale traffic revenues, this is the revenue slide. One thing that stands out right away is although in some regions that had lower traffic volumes, we're seeing higher traffic revenues. And this is, of course, because termination rates, etc., are much higher in some of these regions. And let's see, if we take a look comparing 2013 to 2020 in many of the regions, for example, Middle East, Eastern Europe, and North Africa, almost, but Sub-Saharan Africa and Western Europe, we see that wholesale traffic revenues are actually higher than they were in 2013. And once again, a lot of this can be attributed to the growth in mobile subscriptions in these areas. Okay, let's shift away from regional look and look at mobile versus fixed trends. And this slide, what we're looking at is fixed terminated traffic by market type. So we're separating it out, emerging versus advanced markets. And as we see, the bulge is in the emerging mobile, where we see a large proportion of traffic, and we see it peaking out around 2014 to 2015, but even by 2020 it still makes up over half of the traffic, total traffic. And then shifting over to wholesale revenues, comparing 2010 to 2020, first we notice is revenues are still larger, or are larger in 2020 versus 2010, and that emerging mobile, once again, has the lion's share of wholesale revenues. And now looking at subscriber growth by region, 2020, 2021, we see for fixed across the board decline in subscribers, except for in Africa, which is a special case where they've always had very, very low subscriber penetration for fixed, and now we're seeing a little bit of growth there, but it's from a small base, so any growth is big growth. On the other hand, for mobile, we see that there are still regions, for example, in Middle East, US, where we see, and Africa again, where we do see growth in subscribers. And we also see that any decline in growth by region is much less than fixed. And on this slide, we're comparing fixed to mobile again, but looking at subscribers, we see fixed subscriber side very flat, and maybe 1 billion subscribers, where we see on the mobile side, we see a ton of growth, and we see 8 billion, over 8 billion subscribers. And then if we look at the fixed traffic versus mobile originated traffic, we see that in 2012, there were about the same volumes of traffic, but we see by 2020, fixed makes up a much smaller proportion of total traffic. Okay, now let's shift gears slightly and look at capacity, or the data side a little bit, subscriber and capacity together. When we look at transition from mobile generations, 3G to 4G, 4G to 5G, etc., we're seeing an increase of throughput, averaging maybe 5 times the throughput. And as internet works better, demand increases. We see that as mobiles switch generations in certain regions, this is where we see an uptick in the amount of throughput, and thus an uptick in the amount of capacity demand in specific regions. But looking at fixed broadband subscribers, although the numbers are much smaller, what we saw in previous slides, just a little bit of growth in the fixed broadband subscriber numbers, you see a much greater effect on capacity to demand. And this slide kind of gives you an idea of, on the left, subscribers, mobile or dark blue, fixed or the light or turquoise, that mobile users make up 84% of total global subscribers. But if we look at the data usage side, or the capacity demand side, we see that just those 16% of fixed subscribers generate more than 80% of total data usage. But let's hop back to the mobile broadband side again. And this we see broken out by different regions. We see the different generations and at what stage they are in rollout. We see that up in Asia and Middle East, we see the 5G rollout in full take, whereas in LATAM and Africa, less so. We see up in Asia in particular, just starting out, we see the transition 4 to 5. But if we go over to Africa, we're just starting to see, there is a little bit of 5G, but in just a couple of markets like South Africa. But really the transition there is from 3G to 4G. And for capacity demand, there are certain regions where you really see a difference in uptick in demand. For example, in Nigeria, there was 10 million new mobile broadband subscribers, and you could see an increase in international capacity to that region during that quarter. Okay, looking ahead, let's wrap up this presentation by looking at some forecasts in mobile subscriber growth. First, let's take a look at forecasts by region. We see that global average is just under 2% growth. This is compound annual growth 2021 to 2028. Global average just under 2%. We see the region that stands out in terms of most growth, or forecasted growth, is Africa. Next would be Middle East, and we see Europe has the smallest amount of growth forecast. Now, looking at the highest forecast country additions, now this is looking at total mobile subscriptions. We see that 2021 compared to 2028, that India will have the most net adds at almost 200 million adds. China is second. And then we see descending Pakistan, Nigeria, and surprisingly United States at over 40 million adds, up there with Ethiopia and Brazil. Oh, and the DRC. And for the final slide, let's look at forecasted largest countries by 5G subscriptions. So the top 5 we forecast by 2028 would be China with over 1.5 billion subscriptions, India in second with over 800 million, US with almost 400 million, and surprisingly, Indonesia with over 200 million, beating out Japan. Now this is, of course, a recorded presentation, so I will not be able to answer your questions immediately, but if you have any questions for me regarding the presentation, please feel free to contact me at pchristian@telegeography.com. Thank you very much for your time, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Some fantastic insights there. Wow, the one that really hit me was that 16% of fixed generating 80% of that data usage. Huge. Some fantastic insight there. Now, to continue in the same vein with more fantastic insight, I have someone joining me live now from Orange International Carriers, and that's Frederic Freschel. Frederic, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, James, and thank you, Susie, for inviting me for this presentation. So indeed, that's a challenge when you look at the curves presented by TeleGeography to answer the question: should we leave the market on international voice, or should we keep building the market? That's exactly what I'd like to share with you today.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'll leave you to it for your presentation. Enjoy. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you correctly see the slide. Is that okay? Yes, great. So first of all, let me introduce myself. So I'm Frederic Freschel. I'm a VP for Voice and Mobility Solution at Orange International Carriers. And what I'm going to share with you today is some slides regarding, of course, a short presentation about what we do in terms of a value proposal to the market, but also to share with you the value on international voice market, because apart from traffic, what is very important to project ourselves is how we can defend international voice value and transform our operating model. So a few words about Orange International Carriers. We belong to Orange Group and Wholesale and International Division. So we've been working on the wholesale market for more than 25 years from now. We are a Tier 1 internet network provider, and we have invested quite a lot in security and anti-fraud solution. We're part, of course, of the Global Leadership Forum and part of the i3 Forum on this topic. And regarding voice, we are indeed a Tier 1 carrier for international wholesale voice market, handling globally 32 billion minutes of voice traffic last year. And on mobility solution, we handle more than 800 roaming agreements. And of course, as you know, we support our services on international backbone thanks to submarine cables and several POPs that are deployed throughout the world, including CDN services, IPX transport, IP transit, and of course, the latest but the most important value for today, voice. So voice across the world is indeed what we do provide. So currently we have more than 350 direct connection. We have invested in brand new SBCs and POP in several regions. So we've got 2 in the US, 2 in Europe, 2 in Africa, and 2 in Asia. And of course, what is very important for us to promote is not only connectivity and numbers of routes and destination available, but also mainly the value proposal we have on the market, thanks to several offers we can propose to retailers, wholesalers, but also digital players, which are growing as a very important customer segment. So in a nutshell, I'm not going to read all the portfolios that we have, but you know, for voice, we handle international direct dialing calls to Orange footprints. So we are present in 29 countries, so mainly targeting Europe and Middle East Africa. And apart from IDD, we do support hubbing voice services. And this hubbing voice services has been clearly boosted lately with 2 main growth relays I'd like to share with you today. One is called Corridor. So a voice corridor is something that is dedicated for diasporas willing to call their home countries. So we do provide to retailers a voice corridor for origin A to destination B. And this is, of course, boosting traffic, boosted unlimited plan. And you see the link important between retail and wholesale is a key factor of success. The second one, very important, and for which the market is moving, is what we call Serenity Voice Management, which is somehow the way we propose managed services when MNO is willing to outsource international voice services. So we have a wider scope of services that have been developed lately, but we are in a position to handle inbound and outbound traffic with professional services and with a strong financial commitment to sustain retailers on their growth plan and in-source somehow international voice traffic. Last but not least, on retail side, very important to say that we do promote also some specific plan for travelers with Orange Link and Orange Travel offers, which enables people for business or leisure to initiate calls around the world. And this services is available on a ready-to-use prepaid mode on SIM or eSIM card. So in a nutshell, that's who we are and what we do provide on the market. But to come back to the theme of today, really, in terms of international voice markets, the most important things to mention is that we are facing three big, significant headwinds with OTT substitution, which is the first one I'd like to share with you today. Second one is regulation, which has a strong pressure on price and security, by the way. And last but not least is the VoLTE roaming and interconnection evolution with a 2G, 3G sunsets that appears across the globe. So first, OTT substitution. You see here that long-term trends are set to be confirmed in 2022. Voice carrier traffic is down almost 7%, while OTT is growing up to 13%. So you've got the CAGR forecast for 2020 up to 2025, and you see the substitution growth from OTT, where the capture of voice value and usage versus telco carriers defending value on a declining market. So the gap is accelerating in the coming years. Secondly, regulation. Regulation is impacting, of course, the value. If I take the example of Europe, you can see that since 2020, EU regulation imposed MNOs to decrease their mobile termination rate and fixed termination rate. And apart from that, you have also to handle complex situations with CLI spoofing, CLI manipulation, with PA from changes from over the several zonings and regions we are addressing, and also steer shaken that has appeared lately in the USA with FCC and is coming into force in France next year, as an example. Last but not least, VoLTE roaming. VoLTE roaming is great, of course, because that's a great use case for roaming in and roaming out business cases. But as you know, this is impacting a brand new business model that will replace the current existing one based on price per minute on a layer of services where voice will be handled through a full IP model. And all international calls that are today performed on standard voice, with VoLTE roaming, it will be done on a local mode thanks to local breakout. So that's the three main pillars that are affecting the market and for which we have to find a solution jointly on the wholesale industry. So what we do propose on the market to move forward and to maintain our leadership and the investment strategy to help retailers defend international voice value is really to enhance the voice offers and value proposal on the market. So I think I gave you several examples in the offers we have developed lately. So we are pushing automation and digitalization indeed because it brings value for customer, but also it enhances operating model. It prepares the future also with CPaaS market. You have to be able to move on cloud numbers, international hubbing, but also messaging services, which are requesting digital players. Second is to keep addressing retail and diaspora need with the corridor I just mentioned earlier. And very important pillar is number 4, for which I engage everyone to do that, referring to the previous panel session, is the transformation of operating model, where we need to invest in automation and digitalization, because that's the only way to improve operational efficiency while ensuring and improving user experience and customer experience. And last but not least, I really do believe that there is a growing need on the market to outsource their voice activity. And thanks to Serenity Voice Management and the way we can enlarge customer reach, that's something for which we are really entitled to execute in the future. So to sum up and summarize, if we want to keep strong leadership on international voice market, here are the 3 pillars that we propose to defend international value while volume are decreasing. The first one is security. So security on network is key to survive, and you see the market face a lot of international fraud, and by the way, not only on voice, but also on messaging services. OBR management, so origin-based routing is a key asset to keep in the market. This is very complex to handle, but that's a key leverage to activate if you want to create value. This is spreading all over Europe, but also in other countries like Middle East and starting in Africa with Smart Africa initiative. And last but not least, of course, digitalization. And we have to be able to promote our services on the digital channels through Orange eCare as an example. So that was the presentation I wanted to share with you today. Feel free to look at the link provided in the slide, where you can have much more information on our website, and ready to answer some question. Floor is yours, James.
Thank you very much, Frederic. No questions from the audience, but thank you very much for your time. And it's a really, really nice layered segue into what we have coming up next. So join me soon for a LAMP Telecom sponsored session looking in detail at the regional challenges and opportunities with voice. Thank you very much. That was Frederic Freschel from Orange. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.